Maximizing the value of your calf crop is critical for your operation, and Merck Animal Health can help you do just that. But why do buyers pay more for some calves than others? Experts with Merck Animal Health walk us through what you should be doing on sale day. Good evening and welcome to Rural America Live. I'm Tammy Arender. Merck Animal Health is a leading force in delivering new and valuable product innovations, solutions, and services to cattle producers. So what can you do to add value to your herd? That's where the experts with Merck Animal Health come in. Here with me tonight, Director of Cattle Technical Services, Dr. John Hutchison, and Technical Services Manager, Dr. Harold Newcomb. They join us tonight, and before we dive in, we want to get to know you guys a little bit. Dr. Hutchison, tell us a little bit about yourself.
You bet. So I'm a graduate of Texas A&M University. I got my bachelor's and master's degree there in ruminant nutrition. Got a PhD at Colorado State University in ruminant nutrition. So I'm a nutrition guy by heart for cows. I grew up in Amarillo, Texas. My father was a professor of animal science and on receiving lightweight stocker cattle into feed yards. So I grew up in kind of a feedlot stocker cattle environment as a kid, and I've been working for Merck Animal Health for 28 years.
Wow, so you've been around this your entire life.
Yes, ma'am.
As a kid. Dr. Newcomb?
Well, I hail from Batesville, Mississippi. I grew up in Mississippi and went to Mississippi State University. Got my DVM there in 1984, so a little while ago. Practiced in Batesville, Mississippi in a mixed animal practice with my wife for 18 years. And then I went to work for Merck, and I've been working for Merck for about 20 years.
That's tremendous. So you got the street cred to be here tonight to talk about what we're talking about. We know that our cattle producers and our ranchers always want to add value to that herd. How do they do that? Give us some recommendations for producers.
You bet. I mean, we're going to talk about it quite a bit tonight, and we'll dig a little deeper, but there's numerous animal factors, like, you know, what their genetics are, whether they're polled or not, whether, you know, some frame size, flesh. There's several animal factors that people can manage that they need to be aware of and what drives price premiums from the buyers that buy them. There are herd management scenarios that go on that people pay for. Some of those herd management, you know, whether they use parasiticides or not and get gain and different rates of gain help add value to those calves. And some of those are rewarded for at sale barn as well when they come to sell them. And then the last thing we'll talk about will be programs. And so there's some programs that we talk about, and those programs, particularly vaccination programs, VAC 45, VAC kind of 60 health programs, how valuable they are. And so those are some things that come into play along with you know, those management scenarios as implants and deworming and things like that add a lot of value to these calves.
So many different layers, and we're going to kind of peel that onion tonight, so to speak, and get down to all those layers. Let's start with kind of a deeper dive you guys took with the Superior Livestock Auction. I know you got a lot of data from a study with them.
Yes, we do. You know, I guess, first of all, we ought to thank Superior Livestock. They let us have access to the data. And it's rich with data that can help make decisions for producers that are listening tonight, so they can take this information, apply it, and change outcomes in a positive manner. And don't think that Merck had a lot to do with it. We get to generate the results and get to talk about them, but folks at Superior, a shout out to them for allowing us to get access to that data. And then there's two professors, one in Ag Eco, Dr. Glenn Tonzer at Kansas State University, and another one that's at the vet school, Dr. Dave Renter at Kansas State University. They did all the work. So they took all that data, about 2.5 million head of cattle in this database. And so they crunch the numbers and find the things that are significantly having an impact on cattle price. So then we can talk to people on the show like this and tell them what we found and how they can change things to make more money.
So what did you find?
So, yeah, a lot of things, right, related to animals and programs, factors. And so there's a lot of different things that we found that drive value. And I think we'll talk about that as we go through this evening.
Right. And I know that we're talking, too, that where we are right now in the cattle industry, they're getting a good price. But we also know that the inputs are even higher than usual, correct?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, today's cattle prices have probably never been higher than what they are right now. But if you look at production costs have skyrocketed, especially over the last 2 to 3 years since the COVID, right? Our production costs have gone straight up. So, a lot of this preconditioning program is actually about helping those producers capture dollars that they may not have caught before, but it actually helps make them more efficient, more profitable.
Yeah, you see the graphic up there on the screen as it relates to the different calf prices around. So those are calf prices from 2021 and 2022. And then you look at today, you talk about a lot of opportunity for cow-calf producers going into the tight supply. They were about $1.70, $1.80 in 21, 22 on average. And now when you look at feeder cattle prices, 5 weights, they're bringing around $2.70. And so a lot of value to be created, which means a lot of opportunity. When you add pounds, it has that value of that gain is the highest it's ever been for these cow-calf producers.
Right, we know that that's where the money is. But Dr. Newcomb, starting with practices that did not impact price. The implant status was one of those factors. Did that surprise you?
No, not really. If you look at the amount of cattle that are in our database, maybe like over 4 million head, it doesn't show that there was ever any price difference. The other thing is, too, Merck is been at some of these superior sales, and we've done a buyers panel before where actually the buyers get to sit down and talk with the producers, and the producers ask them questions. And one of those questions was actually, do you discount or do you not like us to implant our calves? And the answer was quite obvious that no, they want those calves implanted. They're going to use those technologies themselves, and they see that as a technology that's underused in the cow-calf operations. And they think we ought to be using it to maximize our resources and our income coming back to us.
Yeah, I think to go on that is, we're talking about 21, 22 data because it's the freshest, but we've been doing this for right at 10 years with Superior, and never, ever in the history of doing our data analysis have we found that implanted calves bring differently than non-implanted calves. And, the 25 pounds and worth $2.80, an enormous opportunity for producers to add revenue to their cow-calf operation.
Right, that's a sizable difference. But what about the producer that's invested in some really strong genetics? Still worth implanting then?
Oh, absolutely. The response we see when we look at, we've done some studies where we've looked at breed types, whether it's Continental Cross, maybe Charolais Cross calves, versus, say, straight Angus, or maybe even some Brahman cross calves. And when we've done that, we see the same percentage response. So we see a 20% response in average daily gain to the implants. Think about that, 20% improvement in average daily gain by using one implant. And so when we see that, if a Charolais cross calf is gaining 5 pounds a day, well, 20% is a pound a head per day, is that magnitude of difference. If they're only gaining 3 pounds a day and it's 20%, it's 0.6. And so, the magnitude is different, but the percentage response, no matter across breed type, we still see that similar response, which I think is great for cattlemen. And so as people improve genetics, which is a good thing, that implant response is still there. And that magnitude of change is bigger for those folks that have improved their genetics.
Right. It's good to know what to look at when you're looking at those numbers. So, Dr. Newcomb, does it pay to implant calves during that post-weaning preconditioning period if a producer plans to sell anyway?
Sure, because like Dr. Hutchison said, you're getting like a 20% increase in weight gain, right? No matter what. So, if you're gaining, 2 pounds a day, you're going to be gaining like 2.4. Okay, so, that can add up to some real pounds, which translate now into real dollars at $2.50 a pound, right? So, when you look at what the cost is to implant versus the return, it really makes implanting one of the most profitable things that producers can do today.
Yeah, and I think if you think of that preconditioning period, one of the things, and we'll talk about, I think we'll go deeper into that, but, we talk about getting those cattle healthy and get them to eat. Well, one of the physiological factors we see when we implant calves is it helps stimulate intake. And so if we can stimulate intake in that preconditioning and get those calves to eat, and once they've been weaned and getting them eating either hay, forage, or mixed feed, the better off we'll be from a health standpoint as well as a gain standpoint.
So what I'm hearing is the bottom line is you're leaving money on the table if you're not doing that.
Absolutely. The technology has been proven since the 50s. And so it is just, it's one of those things that producers have in front of them, a technology to improve their operation in terms of pounds weaned. And it's simple, it's easy to use, it's safe, and it's the ultimate sustainability product, right? They get more out of the forage that they're providing and the cow and the mother's milk. They're getting more out of that and putting it into lean gain.
What about those who might be using the marketing tools in HTC or GAP or something like that?
Sure, there's marketing programs that are out there that on specifically NHTC or GAP that don't allow implants to be used in those cattle that are in those programs. And people, obviously, there's a lot of different ways we market beef. There's a lot of different programs. There's all natural. There's NHTC. There's all kinds of different programs. And so we, all people have to do is make sure that when they look at their cost. So all those programs have a cost. Implanting has a cost. It's about $1.50 an implant for 25 pounds. And so when you look at the cost of these programs, you just need to make sure the producers do the math, just like they always should do. And so input cost, EID tags, audits, quality manuals, all the things they have to do and participate in those programs, they just need to make sure that when they come time to market their calves, they know what the production they're giving up, about 25 pounds. So does that production that they've given up, can they get that back in the premium? And so, in today's market, implants are bringing about $40-50 a head. And in our database, the NHTC and GAP programs are a little less than that in terms of what they gave for a premium. And so that premium has to be as much as what the production losses from those implants by not using them.
Right. So you've got to do a little homework as you go into
Absolutely.
it. But it's well
like
worth
anything.
It. That's right.
You bet. Input, cost, output, what you're gaining. You got to do the math.
And so we've talked about implants, but what about, is there an additional benefit if a producer wants to do the implant and a dewormer at turnout?
You bet. I mean, two technologies that are awesome for cattle producers. That all cattle are exposed to parasite. We talked about the implants given 25 pounds. When we deworm cattle properly, and we would call it strategic deworming, timing's important. I think we'll talk about that maybe even a little later tonight. But, the implant response, we talked about 25 pounds. When we look at deworming calves and calves on cows, we sometimes see about an average of about 25 pounds. And so they're additive. They're different. They work in different parts of the body. The immune or the endocrine system is where the implants work. They stimulate some natural hormones to natural metabolism to be more efficient. And on the parasites, they're robbing nutrients in the gut. And so when we get rid of them, we have more nutrients available for that growth. And so because they're two different mechanisms of action, we see additive response.
And so we're looking at implants, and far as the non-implanted calves, can they bring more, or why should they decide at that moment, and at what moment should they decide that they do that?
Well, I think it's important, maybe we should have backed up a little bit when we started, but all cow-calf producers ought to have a marketing plan. They should have a plan. They should work with either their advisor. They should sit down and think about, how am I going to market my calves this year? And what is the way to maximize the biggest revenue that I can get from the way I market those calves? Because there's a lot of options out there. And so, but when it comes to implants, if you get them in the ear, it's 25 pounds. And so then it's just multiplying those pounds by the price per pound. And with $2.80 calves times 25 pounds, you're almost to $70 a head. And so it's hard to pass that up.
Right.
It's a lost opportunity, particularly in today's marketplace with tight supplies and the pounds of beef we're trying to produce. It's, I encourage producers to take a really hard look at implanting, because it's an awesome technology to increase pounds. And
going back to the deworming, any good practices for deworming calves?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at deworming cattle, you ought to be deworming those calves on the cow, because we know that if we strategically deworm, that we can get probably about 25 extra pounds just in weaning weight. And then when we go to the preconditioning period, that's multiplied again, okay? The other thing, too, is when we look at what parasites are doing, basically they're doing three different things, right? The biggest impact that a parasite has on that animal is to decrease feed intake. So a parasitized animal is actually going to eat less. Well, when they start eating less, then you're going to see a production drop. Doesn't matter whether you're measuring production in average daily gain, milk production, any type of production, you're going to see a drop. The third thing that the parasites do is they can alter that animal's immune response, especially to viral vaccines and viral diseases. And so when we're talking about preconditioning, a lot of preconditioning is us vaccinating for viral diseases that these animals will face in the next production phase. So it's very important because these buyers are buying health is actually what they're buying. So it's important that we get these animals to a point to where they can properly respond to the vaccines that we're giving.
Good advice. And I think it's, just to add on to what about the additive response, well, we've done research to prove it. And so, we try to pride ourselves at Merck Animal Health, doing research and trying to make science-based decisions. And so we did a study where we had cattle in pastures in Idaho, and we had the cattle in pastures that got no implant, no deworming, and no feed additive. And then we had cattle that got an implant only, a feed additive only, and a safeguard only. And then we had animals that got all three. And so what was really cool about the data was, we saw about 25 or 30 pounds on each individual. So Revelar G gave us 25 pounds, Safeguard gave us 25, 30 pounds, and the feed additive that we had at that time gave us 25 or 30 pounds. And we looked at the calves that got all three, they were close to 80 pounds of extra weight. So they were additive. And so we have research to even back up what we're saying as it relates to implants and dewormers and having that additive response.
Love it when we got the science to back that up. We're going to talk more about that in just a little bit. But it is clear that implanting and deworming the calves are definitely worth it, because considering if your goal is to bring more revenue on sale day, that's what you need to do. But we do need to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about ways to increase the value of your calf crop and take your calls. So we're going to open up our phone lines for you. These experts with Merck Animal Health will be ready to answer your questions live when we come back. That number is 877-731-6733. More Rural America Live when we come back. Welcome back to Rural America Live with Merck Animal Health. I'm Tammy Arender. We're talking about how to get more dollars from your calf crop. And we have a veterinarian and nutritionist from Merck Animal Health joining us to shed light on this topic. Our phone lines are open and we are ready to take your calls. That number is 877-731-6733. Now, of course, this data from the Superior Livestock Auction, it is quite insightful, and I realize we've just scratch the surface. Tell us a little bit more about what you were able to glean from this information.
You bet. Maybe a little bit about the data.
Sure, yeah.
So it's 2021 and 2022, so it's 2 years of data, and there's a little over 2.5 million head of calves. So, think about the magnitude of that, 2.5 million head of calves. Calves weighed about 500 pounds, 550 pounds, and there are, 15,000 lots. And so there's a lot of different individual traits that we evaluated. And I think, again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But some great opportunity to mine through that data and find things out that had big impacts on selling price, which then obviously increases revenue for our cow-calf producers.
Right, and then that's the bottom line. That's what we're looking at right here. Now, Dr. Newcomb, I know we've touched on a little bit about what was going on with deworming, and I know we have another show with Merck coming up on June 22nd where we'll take a deeper dive into that. But let's go back to where we are with the deworming and exactly what does that add to the cow-calf producer? What does it do for them to do that?
Well, obviously, if they're doing it on the cow, then generally we will see somewhere around 25 extra pounds of weaning weight. The other thing, too, is we can see a 10 or 12% jump in conception rates. So we'll actually create more pregnancies. So those producers will actually probably see more calves born. Rarely do we ever get 100% conception rate. And the other thing, too, is rarely do we ever get 100% of the calf crop that's on the ground back to the cell or back to being weaned, okay? So anything that we do, like deworming, which we increase weight, we increase health, right? Because those animals are going to consume more. Their immune system is going to work better. You know, and if we think about deworming and preconditioning and why it's so important, remember, like I said, those guys are buying health, okay? And that animal has got to have a low parasite burden to properly respond to the vaccines that we're giving, okay? The Pasteurella vaccines, the viral vaccines, all those require a certain type of immune response that the parasites will actually suppress. So when we get those out of there, we get a better and a more proper immune response to those vaccines.
And I know it's often difficult to do that because those parasites are out in the pasture, aren't they? And
Well,
they're
they
gonna eat
are
that
in the pasture.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, when we think about deworming, you know, we always deworm the animal, right? But where do you think the actual parasite load is? 90 to 95% of it is out there in the pasture in the form of parasite eggs and parasite larvae. So when we deworm, what we're trying to do is to have the most negative impact on the parasite in the animal, on the pasture, and have the most positive impact on production and the immune response. So,
Yeah, I think you know what Harold's saying too is you think about you know, cow-calf, the biggest expense, the largest expense for most cow-calf operations is feed.
Right.
Whether that's feed they provide or feed in the grass that they graze. And you think about, you know, a cow-calf producer is a calf creator, right? He's creating calves, and so you've got to get them bred. And so body condition and utilizing those nutrients. And if you have those parasites in there, you know, they're fighting for those same nutrients and disrupting all, you know, feed intake. They're disrupting nutrient absorption. And so think about some folks, part of the country where they've had drought and they have, you know, very, you know, lot less grass. And so those cows are trying to do more with less forage. And if they're carrying parasites, it makes it even more of a challenge. And taking care of parasites is easy. I mean, there's all kinds of forms. We at Merck have the ability, you know, we can, when they're in the chute, we can work them and we can deworm them. But if they're out on the pasture and you don't want to work them and you want to leave them out there, we have all kinds of feed formulations that you can put out for cattlemen that they can put it in their mineral, they can put a block, they can put cubes, they can put mixed feed. I mean, there's really not a lot of excuses for people to make sure their cows are clean of and their calves are clean of parasites, and then help manage the pasture parasite load as well.
Right. I was going to say, I bet that feed formulation is critical at that time in fighting that.
You bet, because you can time it right. I bet Dr. Newcomb has some comments about timing it right and pasture contamination and things like that.
You know, if we talk about strategic deworming, what we're really trying to do is lower that parasite burden on the pasture. You know, in the South where I'm from, we're going to do it in the springtime, maybe about 6 to 7 weeks after grass puts out, and then 6 to 7 weeks later, which is really going to put us about this time of year. Well, you know, we understand that the producers may gather and work those cattle the first time, but just to deworm, they're probably not going to gather or deworm again. So there's several different non-handling forms of safeguard that actually do a very, very good job of deworming those animals. But when you do that, when you do it strategically like that, what you're actually doing is you're killing the parasites about the time they make a turn. So you're lowering the pressure or the amount of immature parasites, the eggs and the larvae out there on the pasture.
Right, good
so think about it. I mean, we try to make it easy.
Yeah.
You know, putting an implant in an animal is extremely easy. Goes under the skin of the ear. It's a little bitty needle. It's a couple of pellets. It's really simple. If you don't want to get your cattle up to deworm, and you want to deworm at an appropriate time, then you can just go out there and feed it to them. And so it's pretty cool at Merck Animal Health to have those options to do things, you know, as simple as possible. And these are things that have, I mean, we're talking 25 pounds and 25 pounds at $2.80. I'll probably sound like a broken record by the end of the night, but I mean, people need to get their calculator out and multiply 280 by 25 and see what that number is,
Absolutely.
and that they're additive. And so, it's just unique times with the prices the way they are, and people ought to take advantage of that with these technologies.
And with all the options out there, they do make it easy. We do want to give that phone number one more time, 877-731-6733. We would love to hear from you, our experts here tonight, able to answer any questions that you might have with your cow-calf herd and how we can increase that profitability. So 877-731-6733. I want to go back to the data that you got from Superior and Kansas State University, because you mentioned 2.5 million head of cattle. So, I mean, that is an incredible cross-section. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the practices that you were able to say, okay, we know this added value.
You bet. One that was really simple, that every cattleman ought to do, is beef quality assurance. And so when we sell those calves through that auction, there's little badges. Every lot of cattle has got a badge, and it's told what they do. They're BQA certified, they're implanted, they're on a VAC health program, et cetera. They've got this genetics. And so all those things are recognizable and add value. But beef quality assurance, $8 a head for being BQA certified. And my soapbox would be, if you cattlemen out there aren't beef quality assurance certified, that should be the first thing you do tomorrow morning, is find out from your county extension agent or your veterinarian or your NCBA rep, whatever it may be. You need to find out how to get beef quality assurance certified. I think it's very important for the beef industry and the participants in the beef industry raising cattle that they're BQA certified, and you get paid for it, $8 a head. And so something to think about. I know we have different classes, and we sponsor stockmanship and stewardship seminars around the country. If you're a member of a cattlemen's association, you'll see those things around the country. And I know they offer some BQA certification at those before or after or during. But it's not hard to get beef quality assurance certified. And so I just make a plea to cattlemen that if you're not, you need to be.
Right. Make that simple call and find out where that next class is and get your cattle certified.
Yeah, because beef quality assurance really is our commitment to the beef consuming public, that we know what we're doing when we're producing beef in a safe and wholesome type way.
Right. It's part of the confidence level that you know exactly when you're getting it, exactly what you're getting.
It's our statement to them that we're producing it right.
Right.
And I think the reason why they see a premium from buyers, buyers of cattle, buyers of calves that are there, I think it gives them confidence. You use the word confidence. And so I think it gives them confidence that, okay, these people are doing the right thing as I buy these calves and transition them to another production phase and move them along the food chain in a sense. They know that they've been handled and they've been treated correctly by their certification and their training that they've received.
Backing up what we're saying about it. That's what we're doing. We have our first caller. We've got Bob from Georgia. Bob, what's your question?
Well, I keep hearing y'all talk about worming these calves while they're still on their mother. And I was wondering, how soon can you worm a baby calf?
All right, so, well, you actually want to make sure that those calves are actually out there grazing and have had time to develop a parasite infection. So generally that's going to be somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks of age is when you'll start seeing parasites or parasite eggs come through those calves. So if you deworm somewhere, I want to say probably somewhere around 7 to 8 weeks.
7 to 8 weeks. All right, Bob, hopefully that was a good answer for you. We do want to hear from you. We would love to take another call. We've got 877-731-6733 is the phone line. Phone lines are open, and both of our experts here tonight would be happy to answer your questions. Let's go back and talk about kind of the next level, too, of part of the program, the vaccination programs that you guys have. I know that's important, too. So talk about where we are with that and what Merck offers for that.
Well, Merck has a program called Prime Vac, okay? And actually what it is just different protocols that producers can follow, but they're time honored and proven, okay? So, if you looked at our data or you looked at the data coming from Kansas State, you would actually see that the VAC 45 programs, or ours would be Prime Vac 45, okay, or VAC 45. And it's where the animals get 2 doses of a Clostridial vaccine, 2 doses of modified live vaccine, and a Pasteurella hemolytica multicida type combination. The reason those vaccines are so important is, these animals are at great risk of developing BRD, or bovine respiratory disease, okay? So your modified live vaccines, they produce excellent immunity. They stimulate both sides of the immune system. They get humoral and cell-mediated immunity. They create a lot better memory than say, some of our kill vaccines will. So those are the programs that we promote.
And so you just talked a little bit about VAC 45. Any other particulars you want to bring out about that particular vaccine? About
the VAC 45
Yeah, VAC
program.
45 and what all it entails for the producer?
Like I said, it's 2 doses of the Clostridial vaccines. And I think that, when you do these, you need to be particularly choosy about which one of these Clostridial vaccines that you're using, because different vaccines, you're going to pay a biological price when you vaccinate animals. The deal is you want to work with a veterinarian, you want to work with an animal health professional to help you pick the right vaccine, because a lot of producers will say, okay, I'm just going to go in and buy a blackleg vaccine and I'm going to pick the cheapest one. But the problem is the Clostridial vaccines are probably some of the most harshest ones that we give, and you can actually see a depression in feed intake for over 30 days. At Merck, we've developed some Clostridial vaccines, the Vision line, the Calvary 9. Those vaccines were actually developed to produce the immunity needed, but they're not so stressful. When you look at some of the others, like say that 30-day decrease in feed intake can cost you somewhere between 15 and 20 pounds in weaning weight. So, if you're buying the cheapest one and you're not doing your homework, you could be stepping over dollars trying to save dimes.
Right. And we don't want that to happen. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just think, one thing we probably ought to encourage our producers, besides things like beef quality assurance, and Dr. Newcomb just said it, is, the sooner you can get your local veterinarian engaged in making decisions of vaccination programs and protocols and, what parasites you have to be worried about or not worried about. And so, they can help with that herd health plan. And so they know what's going on locally in the area that you might be ranching or farming in. And so I would just encourage everybody to, start a working relationship with their veterinarian, because they can provide a lot of input and a lot of advice.
What about the Stock and Steward program? Is that something?
Yeah, stockmanship and stewardship program that NCBA is a part of, and we sponsor. And so, we talk about these kind of things. They're all over the country. I think as you see up there, you can see the different dates that are coming up still. Nebraska, Colorado, Canada, or Oregon, and then Ohio. And so those, you can learn a lot. You learn a lot about how to handle cattle, a lot of cattle handling, a lot of stewardship as it relates to, grazing management, health management. Some of the things we're talking about today, they go over in those classes. And
I think sometimes we think those classes, I've been doing this for a long time, but you always pick up something.
Absolutely.
Don't you?
Yeah.
And especially for the networking aspect of that as well. So we'll try and put that up on the screen again here and before the show is over. We do want to go to Oklahoma now. And Bill, what's your question for our experts?
I want to know if you should implant your heifers that you're going to keep.
And so that you're going to keep those heifers?
Yes.
Yes. And so implants are approved for use. You've got to use them at the right age. And so you can't implant them less than 2 months of age. So they have to be greater than 2 months of age and on a good plane of nutrition. But there are some, you have to read the labels, but there are some implants that, particularly implant that we manufacture, Ralgrow, is one that you can use in replacement heifers, and we didn't see an average change in reproduction conception rates when we use those properly. So you can only use one implant in those heifers, and you need to do it when they're greater than 60 days of age or 2 months.
Very good. Bill, thank you for that question. We want to head out west now. Understand that in Idaho, there's a couple out there, Moody and Terry Gross, that they can tell you firsthand what a lot of these practices in the preconditioning area have done for them on sale day. Let's take a look.
On the western edge of Idaho, Moody and Terry Gross run a cow-calf operation not far from the housing developments that are growing around their ranch.
We are MBRT Ranch. We're a cow-calf operation in New Plymouth, Idaho, 50 miles from Boise. We start calving around the middle of February, and we sell the first weekend before Labor Day weekend.
In part because there's competition for land in their area, Moody and Terry have made some changes to maximize the value of every calf they sell each fall at Seven Rivers Livestock Commission.
We have been hesitant to precondition and wean because we just didn't have the facilities. So last year we weaned and we preconditioned, and we saw the difference in our prices. Our manager at the sale yard, he just stops the sale. He flat says, this is Moody and Terry's cattle, and this is what they're giving them, and this is what they've done. And I think we're blessed to have the same buyers and more for several years in a row. They buy our cattle.
Moody and Terry, I'm glad you talked to them because they're a great example of that. They told us that they've realized a $15 per hundred over and above return from vaccinating their cattle versus non-vaccinating them. And last year, for the first time, they weaned their cattle. They weaned them for 30 days. They had 2 rounds of shots, and they've seen an excellent return.
When you do that, it brings money to you. Your price of cattle go up because these buyers are looking, they're competitors. And that's why we have a sale yard, is because we get competitive bidding on these cattle. And when you get them weaned, vaccinated properly, then the competition goes up.
In fact, delivering calves that have been weaned and preconditioned has proven to be a sound strategy, resulting in better health and performance for the calves and higher value on sale day.
The game changer, I think, in our industry has been the cattle buyers at the next level are starting to recognize the value, the true economic value of buying preconditioned animals, and they're starting to compensate the cattle producers down to the cow-calf level for that value. So really, preconditioning is about doing what's right for the cattle, but also adding value to your product. And I want these people to stay in business.
Since we started to precondition, we have noticed, because Moody will sit out in the audience, and we have more buyers, because the buyers want to know where these calves have been and what vaccinations they've had, and they want to know what they're buying. So when we went on the Merck program, I think we've been on the Merck program now for 4 years. That's just helped us tremendously because it sells. We've noticed a big difference in our prices.
Moody and Terry Gross there in New Plymouth, Idaho. And I always say that these guys have to say it's working and it's doing good. But when you hear from a cow-calf producer and somebody that's seeing it firsthand, that's got to make you feel good.
You bet. Absolutely.
I love that part. I love that part.
Part of our job is to go out and try to help producers and find ways that they can continually improve their operation. And so when you see people that follow some of those guys, follow the money, right? The buyers pay for it. And so they do the things that buyers like, and you see them do it, and you see them see success. It's very gratifying.
That's right. It certainly is. We've got another call we want to take. We're going to go to Kentucky and Randy. Randy, what's your question?
Yes, I was wondering if you worm a calf in the field with minerals or whatever. If the calf don't eat the mineral, can the mom pass it through her milk?
Good question.
Yeah, no. The answer to that would be no. But if you do worm in the mineral, you can check to make sure that what you did was working. I mean, Merck has what they call a fecal egg count reduction test program, and that's where you take 20 samples from the animals on the day that you deworm, and then 20 samples again 14 days later, and you're looking for a 90% reduction in that egg count. So if you do that, you will actually verify that the calves or the animals in that group actually consumed the worm medicine, and you had an efficacious deworming, or you had a deworming that worked. And nowadays we haven't talked about resistance to dewormers, but I mean it's out there, so it's even more imperative that we actually check to see whatever we're deworming with is actually working. And at Merck Animal Health, we're very proud of the fact that we have a database where we look at fecal egg count reduction tests to make sure that what you're doing in the field is actually efficacious. And if you contact one of your Merck people, Merck Animal Health representative, they can get you set up to do a fecal egg count reduction test.
All right, very good, Randy. I hope that was a helpful answer for you. We are going to take another quick break, but we will be back. We would love to talk to you. You can call in anytime you want, and we're going to talk more about some preconditioning programs. Again, those phone lines are open, and we would love to hear from you at 877-731-6733. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Rural America Live. Merck Animal Health has partnered with Superior Livestock Auction in Kansas State to evaluate what management decisions and health protocols drive price per pound paid by buyers. And this auction data set from 2021 and 2022 includes data from over 2.5 million head of calves. And we're pleased to have Dr. Hutchison and Dr. Newcomb from Merck Animal Health here with us tonight, walking us through this data. So if you are just joining us and realizing that maybe you've missed part of this, we're going to do a little recap. But before we do that, John from West Virginia has been very patient waiting on us. So, John, what's your question for our experts tonight?
Yes, thank you. I have a question about the infield wormer where you worm in the pasture, the feed wormer. And first of all, two questions. What's the cost per head on that? And the second question, would that be good for, like, if we have some calves in the feedlot that we're getting ready for market, would that be a good time to feed this wormer? Thank you.
Okay. As far as the cost per head, I imagine you're looking at somewhere in the, it depends on the size of it, but if you're talking about calves, you're talking probably under $2 a head is what my suspicion would be. Don't hold me to that because that's not what I do. But as far as deworming in the feed, yes. Deworming when they're getting ready to go. Actually, if they could deworm them probably about 3 to 4 weeks prior to actually vaccinating the calves, they would get the greatest immune response, and they would make sure that those animals are eating at their best, okay? So when we're talking about preconditioning, you want to deworm up front, and then if they're dry lighted, they should stay pretty much parasite-free. But if they're out there grazing again, in those young calves, because they don't have the immunity that a mature cow would, you can see a turn in those parasites probably in as early as like 21 to 28 days. So if you've got them out there and you're grazing, you're feeding them additional with that, then, you know, the way to do it would be, say, 0, 28, and 56 days. That's when you would do your feed-throughs. That should give you almost 75 to 80 days worth of low parasite burden in those animals. And it'll also lower the parasite burden out there on those pastures.
Very good. Now, we've talked about BQA and how important that is and how it increases that bottom line as well. Any other factors that kind of added value?
You bet. There was quite a few other animal factors that were important. And so some of those were, not having horns. And so buyers would pay for a premium, $20 a head for no horns. And so the other thing that is important for everybody to see is that, buyers are looking for medium to medium large frame cattle. And so, there was a $17 a head advantage if they were in that medium to large frame. Flesh, they want that medium light flesh, medium light flesh, and that was worth $15 a head. What they don't want is heavy flesh, which goes back to the implant conversation. Implant conversation keeps them lean, and so helps you manage that flesh. Progressive genetics, that's a list of, if you buy bulls from known genetics, then you get a premium. And so, again, those buyers are recognizing people that are using good genetics. And then the last one that had a big, almost $10 a head was they wanted the cattle in more even groups, so even weights, tighter weight groups that they wanted to see. And so those were all over $10 a head. So those added up, and in the data set, you can look at those kind of additive. And so those have some pretty big impacts. And those are things producers can manage: flesh, frame, polled or not, using known genetics that have some traits that buyers like. And then, of course, keeping that calf crop tight in weight. And so you got to have them tight in birth to keep them tight in weight.
Right. Got a lot of good information right there. We're going to go to Kansas now. And Randy, what question do you have for our experts?
Yes, thank you. I was just curious if there is a method to eliminate the parasite on the pasture itself rather than feeding it to the animal in the normal process. Is there a way to do that, and is it cost effective? Thank you.
Well, there's nothing that you can actually treat the pasture with that will decrease the parasites. What the deal is with strategic deworming is you're allowing the cow or the calf to go out there and harvest the parasites that are on the pasture, and just as they're beginning to mature, you're actually going to deworm that animal and kill that parasite in the animal. Thus, you're lowering the burden on the pasture. With the calf deal, with the day 0, 28, and 56, about every time that those animals are about, or those worms are about to make a turn, you're deworming. So what you're doing is you lower the parasite burden. When it gets hot and dry, then the hot and dry weather, the environment's going to help you out and kill the parasites on the pasture. The other thing, too, is, we're talking about now, I guess, basically spring and summertime, but when you get to the fall, it's going to be important to deworm those animals after a killing frost, and you see that the ambient temperature is going down around below 40 degrees. When you get below 40, you get decreased parasite transmission. But if we deworm those animals early in the fall, say at preg check, if we're preg checking, say, September, even early October in our part of the world, then those animals have a chance to go out and reinfest. So, if you're in the South, I like to say we need to be holiday dewormers, right? We need to be deworming basically in the fall, probably around Thanksgiving or Christmas. And then in the springtime, we want to do it, say, 6 to 7 weeks after grass puts out, and then sometime around the middle of the summer. And that keeps the parasite burden in the animals fairly low, and it helps keep the pasture burden of parasitism low on the pasture as well.
All right, good timetable there. We're going to stay in Kansas, and we have a question from Dwayne. Dwayne, what's your question? Dwayne, still with us? I think that we have lost Dwayne, but maybe he will call back in here in our final few minutes as we're working through the Merck Animal Health and the Superior Livestock Auction data. And I know Kansas State University also helped with that. Anything about preconditioning? Was there any added value? I know we've touched on that is an added value, but what did you learn from that?
Well, I mean, if you looked at the data, the VAC 45 program delivered almost $50 over this data, but with calf prices today, I mean, it's going to deliver a lot more. The thing about the preconditioning programs is basically, like I said, the buyers are buying health. They have confidence in these vaccination programs like the VAC 45 program. They know that those animals, if they receive those programs or those vaccines, they're going to be able to respond to the threats that face them in the next production phase. So they're buying health. These animals now at $2.60 or 50 cents a pound, I mean, they're upwards of over $1,000 a piece. So anything that the buyer can do to keep those animals healthier, he considers it an investment in health.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's important about those weaning programs is the weaning part of it. They're separated, but they're still on farm. And so these are home-raised weaning programs. So home-raised calves transition to a weaning pen or a weaning pasture, and they learn how to eat out of a bunk. They learn how to drink out of a water trough. And so, some of those things, they get acclimated without their mother, and they get acclimated to different kind of feed. They may be getting some kind of milled feed or some kind of hay, and they're not just getting milk and grass. And so, that weaning program helps them transition along with that immunization program. And so when you do that, it's so obvious by the buyers that sit there and pay $15, $17, $18 a hundredweight more for those calves because they know they got less risk in them when they pay the prices they're paying now from a health standpoint.
Right. And I know I've heard some people talk about the Prime Vac program. Is that where this comes in?
Yes. Primeback is, is actually several different protocols that the producer can use. But the Primeback 45 probably is the most profitable that we see through the superior data.
And I think,
and basically that's just where they get, like I said, the 2 clostridials, the 2 modified lives, and a Pasteurella vaccine, Pasteurella multocida hemolytica vaccine. Okay, so it's just setting that protection up for the next production phase. The other thing that we really didn't talk about in here is a little bit about the weight gain. Okay, we know that, say, from the data, it was showing about $50, but that didn't take into effect the added weight gain that you can pick up in these preconditioning programs. So you've got the premium of about $50 just by doing a VAC 45 or a Primeback 45 program. But then you have the added extra weight that's added in there that's going to bring home more money as well. The other thing that's in a Primeback program is a certification, okay? And I think that's one thing that our producers really like is the fact that they can certify this, and when the buyer gets it, he gets a certificate saying this was done and this is what was done.
right, and the documentation and certification about these programs is very important. Let's learn a little bit more about that.
In addition, using low-stress cattle handling techniques and getting the animals dewormed and weaned well before sale day will also make a big difference. And through the Primevac program, producers can certify their cattle to demonstrate the extra care they've been given.
We've had excellent response. We encourage all of our producers to sign up on the Primevac program and enroll their cattle in that program, give the proper shots, and follow it up with paperwork to verify. The response from our buyers has been phenomenal because when we get calls, especially in the fall, the very first thing that they ask is what shots have the cattle had and how long have they been weaned.
The doors to more buyers, more money. We sell at the sale yard because they seem to really help us. They push our program. They're the ones that got us started. They're the ones that introduced us to the Merck people. And, it's just a win-win. It's just sometimes you just think you're just too busy to change, but you just got to do it.
Well, we only have about 90 seconds left here to kind of wrap up this show. This has been a lot of great information, but any big takeaways that you want our producers to know tonight?
You bet. I think it's hopefully they learned something about the management factors, flesh, frame, BQA, all those things that add value, weight variation, good genetics. I think those are things that they hopefully take home and could maybe apply to their practice at their ranch. And then always don't forget how important parasite control is, deworming, and how easy it can be. And then implants. Implant those calves. Lots of revenue to be generated from those calves. So those would be the big things. And the last thing would be, get your calves in a VAC program. Wean them at home. Keep them for 45 days. Buyers just love those calves that are ready to go for the next transition.
All right, these are tangible things. Final 30 seconds.
What I would say is, remember, 2 most profitable things you can do to implant and deworm. You need to be working with your local veterinarian, develop that health program that meets your production goals.
That's right. And you brought up a very good thing. We love having you experts here, but you've also got experts right there in your own backyard. You've got veterinarians, you've got Merck representatives that you can reach out to. You can also go online. We want to give that website to you one more time. It's mahcattle.com. If you have anything that was not answered for you tonight, you can go to that website and I'm sure get an answer there. And then join us again on June 22nd with another visit with Merck Animal Health. I'm Tammy Arender. I appreciate you joining us tonight on Rural America Live. We'll see you next time.